And we're live. Welcome to the Country Club. Tonight, Country Club Live, we have Mr. Tim Hooglin, TH3D Studio. And I'm going to turn it over to him and let him introduce himself, and then we're going to get right into the interview. Tim, it's on you, buddy.
It is on me. I'm looking for that tweet right now. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and retweet that really quick. Those of you guys that don't know me, my name's Tim. I'm a maker that just happened to start a business unintentionally in the 3D printing space. If you guys are familiar with me, we do the unified firmware, we do upgrade parts, bed leveling kits, etc. Just a lot of stuff. There's honestly too much to list right now. I will be at Maker Faire in New York. If any of you guys are going to be there, make sure to find me and say hi. Yeah, that's about it. A brief summary there.
Cool, man. Well, and I don't know how many of my interviews you've seen, but we talked on the phone today, and I told you I try to treat these as a real interview. They're casual, but it's a true interview. So what we're going to do is we're going to step back to the beginning. A little over a year ago, when Tim Hooglin got his ANET A8. Yep,
that was my first.
I know it was. I went back and watched your videos. Believe it or not, I skimmed through every video you had today.
Stalker.
But when you decided to get your 3D printer, what was the deciding factor to get that first 3D printer?
So are you talking about model selection or just getting a printer in general?
No, just getting a printer in general, because all of us wanted a 3D printer when they first started talking about them forever ago, but nobody had the money. So what was your deciding factor to say, okay, I'm going to get the ANET A8 instead of maybe a $600 or $700 printer?
Well, my initial reason for getting a 3D printer was the fact that I've always been into electronics. I've always built, my own circuit boards, little projects. And I was kind of tired of making my own enclosures. I've done everything from, little Hammond boxes and drilling them out, taking jeweler saws and making nice cutouts, and God, it just took forever. And then I've also used like Chinese food containers, the plastic ones you come in, you clean them out, just double stick tape some boards in there. And I was like, you know what? I want to be able to make my own enclosures. And I looked up, how much it costs for plastic. Like, man, I could print an enclosure for like $1 or $2, and it's exactly what I want. So that was my driving factor to actually get a 3D printer, was because I wanted something to make my little projects that I made better. And my deciding factor for the ANET was definitely cost, like, most people's. But I spent a lot of time. I think I trolled through the ANET groups on Facebook for close to a month or two before, going back and forth, asking, friends that had machines. And my thing was, I didn't want to spend a ton of money right up front, because I didn't know if, like, I could have gotten, I could have hated it. So I was like, okay, I got an ANET A8, and I think it cost me all of $200 shipped from, it was actually from AliExpress seller, but it was from US, so they were drop shipping. And that I got it, and immediately upon assembling it, I got everything put together. I upgraded the power supply right away to a 30 amp one, because I saw the horror stories of people's blowing up. And then I put a MOSFET on the heated bed and soldered the bed wires. So the main issues people seem to have with them. So I didn't have too many issues aside from the heat break was broken on it right out of the box. The seller sent me a new one, but I quickly started to figure out what all these parts were called. I didn't know what a heat break was. I was like, this is just a threaded tube. So I'm like on Amazon searching 3D printer threaded tube. And I'm like, what is this actually called? And I found, just a 5-pack of some cheap ones. And I got it, and I was making prints. But I think the main, regardless of the issues with the ANETs and how much money I've sunk into this thing, because I've got probably $1,000, not even kidding, $1,000 into that printer that was my ANET, which is sitting in the enclosure to my left here and is now one of my main ABS machines. But that printer, because of the problems, and luckily I had background in electronics and programming and, just being a computer guy in general, it allowed me to learn how these machines work. And I started realizing that the same, you know, pretty much all the parts are the same on the machines. You know, they're all translatable between them. You know, like I can put a V6 hot on any printer I want, you know, you know, and, you know, a 12-volt power supply, as long as your amp rating is adequate, is a 12-volt power supply. You don't have to buy an ANET branded power supply or, you know, even an ANET board. You know, what was my ANET A8 now has an MKS Gen 1.4 in it. And I got dual extrusion on there and all sorts of fun stuff. It's actually down right now because there's something up with the thermistor, but that thing ran for a year and a half, on average 18 to 20 hours a day. And this is the first time it's broken down, so I'll give it a pass.
Yeah. Yeah. My first video for YouTube back in January was the greatest printer I've ever owned. And that's my ANET A8, because it taught me everything how to fix things and then what not to do with printer. So
yeah, I've got the chat up here, so I'm just moving around. So if it looks like I'm not looking at the camera, I've got like a 3 monitor setup, and I got Walter on my center monitor, and my center monitor is here, my camera's right here, so I might not always look at the camera.
It's okay, buddy. We understand. I'm not much to look at anyway, so.
He says my logo's backwards. Are they showing my logo backwards?
Well, you know, it does flip it, so I think you can flip it. I'm not sure.
Hang on. Virtual cam, horizontal flip. Did that fix it? I mean, it's showing flipped in Hangouts on my end, but as long as
it's straight for me, so it should be straight for everybody else.
Okay, cool. I flipped it because I saw it on my preview. It was flipped.
Right. So now you're good.
So
all right.
I just
so we move along from the ANET, and you know, you started getting into it. I mean, shortly after the ANET, I mean, you really started going into upgrades and stuff like that in your videos. So were you consuming like YouTube and as much input as you could to do your different upgrades for your printer as you first started?
So I use the ANET Facebook group, which is still really active. I use that a lot. But what I quickly found was that a lot of the information people were giving out wasn't exactly correct. So I started looking at like data sheets on, like, you know, the stepper drivers, trying to figure out how they worked, you know, just getting down to the bare electronics to understand how the machines work, you know, and then you learning that these are basically just specialized Arduino boards. And once that clicked, it kind of all made sense to me. I started fitting the pieces together and started learning, you know, how to combine different things, to get them to do what I want. You know, like if you look, like my early YouTube videos on the TH3D channel, which that channel was my personal channel. Just like when I started selling stuff, I had it on my personal site. It was a hobby, you know? So if you go back and look at my old videos, you see like over a year ago, I was playing with dual extrusion, which I'm now, you know, I now sell parts to do that. You know, but I was playing with all that stuff years ago and figuring it out on my own, just through tons of trial and error. I've burned up quite a few boards in my time, you know, when I was a newbie before I knew what I was doing. But you know, that's how you learn. And it's an expensive way to learn, but you know, I like to learn by doing. And then, you know, if something's not really making sense, I'll go and pull up any information. You know, I've used YouTube. Sometimes the rep forums are helpful. They're hit and miss and kind of dead lately. But, you know, the whole reason for starting to do videos was because I was going, okay, I'm having all these weird problems. There's not really any clear information out there. I want to start putting out something there, you know, and give it to other people, you know, because that's kind of what I like to do. Like if you look at the knowledge base on the TH3D site, it's kind of like, okay, I see this recurring theme of this is an issue. Let me sit down and take a couple hours and do a write-up on it. So that way other people have a way to access it. So they're not sitting there around. And, you know, luckily our site does show up really good on search results because I make sure everything's tagged correctly. So people are able to find it. You know, I kind of want to have a central repository, and that's going to keep growing and growing, you know, over the years as we add more information to it. Right. So, because like I said, the problem is you got, you know, and I've talked about this on other streams, is you know, the Facebook groups are great, but the problem is you got people that think they know what they're talking about, and you post a simple issue, which, you know, oh, you have a partial clog in your hot end, or, you know, your extruder tension's off, like 2 simple things. And you got people telling them to do stuff like, oh, it's your power supply or your bearings are off. And it's like, it's none of that, you know. And I encountered that kind of same stuff in the ANET where I had a problem and there are a bunch of people giving me different input. And it's like, none of this is fixing my problem. So I started venturing out on my own and trying to learn how the machine worked at the very low level, and then just applying, you know, common sense to that. Like, it's okay, if I know the heat break, its job is to keep the heat down from the cold end. That means if this fan up here that's keeping the cold end cool is not working, then I'm going to get heat creep and I'm going to get a jam, you know. It's, you know, this hobby is a lot of trial and error. And, you know, we got a lot of people like myself and Joel and Tom and Angus and Chris's basement, you know, yourself, and just there's tons of people. I can't even name them all. But people that are trying to put out the correct information and make it easier for everybody.
Wait, now you can't include me in the group that tries to put out correct information because I fumble around like a madman in here.
Right. But the thing is, and this is also why I like doing like live builds, is because, you know, you see these printer reviews and what you see is the end result. You don't see them struggling with it. You don't see you don't see them breaking things or things coming broken. All you see is the end result after they've gone through all that. And I like to be pretty transparent with everything. You know, I find that's the best policy, because it's like, you know, there can't be any big secrets if you're putting everything out there. So
and that's exactly right. Why I live stream everything I do, you know, unless it's an interview from like Earth or something like that, or just hey, thank you for everything. It's live, man, because you're right. I mean, when I built the Hypercube, thanks to the Kuntry Klub, by the way, for all the parts and stuff like that, you know, I broke one of the extrusions while putting it together. You know, they saw me. I hit it with a hammer and it just snapped in two, and I'm like, well, crap. Got some super glue, glued it back together, and continued.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that helps out. But, all right, so let's don't move too fast.
Sorry. If I get off topic, just be like, slow down. I talk a lot.
That's okay. So do I.
I know.
That's why we do good live.
We were on the phone for like an hour today. Like,
I know, right?
Just chatting.
Shut up, Jake from State Farm.
I just saw that.
But it's you know, the journey into 3D printing is similar for everybody. Well, everybody in this group and that sticks with it, you know, if you have the money, you can go right out and buy the most expensive stuff and, you know, just start off with the best. But most of us are tinkerers at heart. That's what we do. We like to build things. We like to see how things work. And then when we get them working, we're just ecstatic. So now let's move a little bit forward after the ANET.
Okay.
I know you had some Creality, you had a TiVo, Tarantula. I can't remember which order they were in. Remember, I didn't know you were going to be on. Normally I watch videos for a week and get stuff together. I had what, 2 hours?
I can get most of the order of my printer evolution. So my second printer was actually the iMaker Start.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was like the mini ANET, and that thing I modded to hell. Which
it was the green and black one, right?
Yeah, and that one's now a black and purple one. This one right here. Yeah. And this one's name is Barney, because it's black and purple. And this is all metal frame now. So basically, I did like a mini AM8 on here. My buddy had a Start, and he was playing around in Fusion. He's like, well, I just made some parts. Do you want me to send them to you? He's like, I just put it together and it mostly works. And I was like, sure. So, and this is actually one of my best little printers. These two guys, I got an Ender 2 over here and a Start, or I call the Smart because it's metal and not acrylic anymore. And these are basically my small parts printer. So I need like small little odds and ends, like for products or customer prints or accessories, anything that fits on those beds, I use those printers for because they can crank the parts out a lot faster and the print quality is better. Right. So it was the ANET A8, the Start. Then I got a CR10 from Tiny Machines. Right. And in less than 24 hours, I did one test print with its stock. I ripped out all the electronics. I basically was left with a frame. I bolted the frame to a piece of melamine, put an MKS board in there, ATX power supply, DRV 8825 drivers. There were no TMCs at the time. They were just starting to come to market. And then just a bunch of other upgrades. And then that one I just went, balls to the wall with. And then I had the Anycubic Castle, the Tivo Tarantula. It's all starting to kind of blur together now because I've gotten rid of later, Tyler. Sorry. I think I've given away about 15 machines and I still have like 20 something here. Right. So I've kind of like, that was our guy, Tyler. He's one of our full-time guys. He does like product assembly and he's got, I got him an i3 mini. He's going to get a couple other machines too, once I'm done having my way with them. And then I've got a lot of machines here. It kind of blurs together because once I got the Anycubic Castle, that was like my first review machine. And that was from GearBest, and they just started sending me machines. I had at one point like 3 of them stacked up, and then I was also still buying printers. And the goal of the channel, when I ventured into the ABL kits, the goal of that was just to kind of pay for the hobby. I was hoping to break even and just hopefully pay for the hobby and put some cool videos out. And
you actually started using in your videos Easy ABL. I think before you ever built the first kit. It was in the title of one of your videos, and it was basically you showing how to do auto bed leveling. It wasn't even like a kit or anything like that. It was like, this is how you set it up. This is the probe. This is the way we do this.
Oh, yeah, the Z offset video. That was on that was on the start, right? The green and black one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was showing how to set the offset because there wasn't a very clear video. It was just like it's a crappy video now. It was just shot on my cell phone, but that was like one of the first, like what I would consider one of the prototypes, and as you can see in the video, it's got the orange tip probe. So it was just a standard off the shelf probe. And fun fact, that was the 6th probe I put on there because the first 5 didn't work.
But that was the first that I saw of the Easy ABL as you use it today.
Yeah.
And then it was a few videos later. Like I said, I watched all of these in like 2 hours, and I condensed almost every video you've got into 2 hours. So forgive me if I get some of the timeline a little wrong.
It's fine. I got to pull up my channel and look myself because I can't remember.
But it was a few after that. I can't remember. But you came on and you had done several, and you were doing you were sending out products and all this stuff, and you got on there and you were very heartfelt in saying that you were getting married tomorrow, and your the next day wife was telling you to do this for a living.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting emotional just thinking about that one.
Yeah, no, I watched it, and you choked up on it. And I'm hoping I see the ring. So you're still married. So yep. you're coming up on a year in less than a month, man.
Yeah. October 18th.
October 18th.
We actually have a little trip, to a little like country resort in Indiana. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And congratulations on getting to a year. If I don't talk to you between now and then, but, she told you to start doing this for a living. Now, I don't think you quit your tech job like right then.
No, it was in November.
Okay, so a month after y'all got married, you started doing this full time.
Yeah.
Well, at least a major transition, because you still do IT work even now.
Yeah, and like I was telling you earlier, I have a client that I've actually been working with for I want to say 8 years now. Yeah. And the thing is, I need to focus on, the 3D stuff in order to grow it. And I'm handing them off to a friend of mine. So, but they've actually been really, really supportive. And, I'm very close with the owner there. It's like a medium-sized company. I think about 250 to 300 people. But, I was very open with them. I was like, hey, this thing's kind of taking off. I don't really know what I'm doing with it yet, but and they gave me flexibility to, like if there was nothing going on, I could head out early, so I could go home and pack orders. I mean, because, before I quit my job, I actually converted them to a client of mine. because their level of activity is pretty low for day-to-day stuff. I have everything running pretty smoothly. So, but you know, they were very supportive. Like just today, like we had I had a meeting with the CFO, who's like, you know, the guy I mainly deal with. He handles just a ton of stuff. He's just his CFO is just his title, but you know, he always is asking about the business, and he's like just ecstatic. He's like, this is awesome. He's like, you know, I'm really happy for you. And, you know, even talking to the owner, he's like, man, he's like, you know, you better go for it. He's like, you know, now he's like, I'm glad you did, you know, cause he didn't want to see me, you know, look back and be like, well, what if this was something? You know, it was a great company, you know, right. And they still are. So I'm just kind of getting choked up here. It's like I sit here, and until I start going back through everything, sorry.
No, that's all right, man. No, I get it. You know, and that, you know, really and truthfully, that's one of the great things about YouTube is your journey is all online. You know, whenever you want to go back and go, hey, how did I get to here? You can watch that timeline. And
yeah.
And the thing is, man, you know, and I don't go back and watch my videos often, for sure, because I stream 6 days a week. So there's not you know, I've got a lot of videos, but if I really wanted to, I could go back to my first video and go, look how far you've come. You know what I mean, Tim? Because you've come a long way, dude, in a year. And I'm going to say a year because, you know, that's when you decided that, hey, this is what I'm going to do. So in a year, look at where you are now. So
yeah, it's crazy. Like I'm just, honestly, I'm just really like humbled by the fact that, you know, people actually saw what I was trying to do. And, you know, to be honest, like I had zero interest in starting a company. You know, it just kind of grew that way. And I realized that if I wanted to actually, you know, to be able to supply people with the parts they wanted and, you know, make these kits, like I had to take that leap. And it's been a lot, you know, and what people don't see is, you know, that I'm working a lot. You know, I said on our, you know, if anybody wants to check out the kind of history, I did a very long post on our TH3D site in the news, the 1 year anniversary. And there's pictures of even the first prototype I even, you know, sent out to somebody. And, you know, it's just, I'm just so grateful about all the support from everybody. Like it's, you know, there's always going to be your trolls, like we were talking about, you know, and you just brush them off. You can't feed them.
Well, the biggest thing about 3D printing is the community. It is absolutely the community, because without that community, the word of mouth for you to get your products out there and the reviews and things of that nature wouldn't be there, you know, and without some financial, you know, backing, it's hard to start a company without that community.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, I've only ever done like one, you know, like I've never asked people to, you know, put their money before I had product in my hand, aside from when we did the one run of pre-orders on the CR10 dual boards.
Right.
But, you know, I started all this. I had like, I think 4,000 in my savings account, and I took 1,000 of that. And that's what bought the initial, you know, batch of when I did the kits, you know, and I had to learn a lot quickly, you know, scaling up from, you know, making 10 kits, you know, by hand versus making, you know, 500, you know, in a month. It's a lot, you know, and there's a lot to manage. And then once you actually go to an official business, like, you know, we're registered as an LLC here in Illinois. There's a lot of stuff that you have to have as a company. You know, we pay tens of thousands of dollars a year for just insurances. You know, and that's not even health insurances. You know, they were talking about, you know, just general liability insurance and, you know, workman's comp. Like, I don't know if, like, I didn't know this, but you know, apparently you have to have workman's comp insurance for contractors that work remote. So, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Yep.
You know, and now we actually have employees. We still have a few contractors, but we have actual employees now. But there's just a lot. There's just a lot to running a business that I did not research the business side too much. It was more of, we just kind of jumped in, And my wife has, she does a lot of the legal handling stuff, illegal paperwork, accounting, that kind of stuff. And, just kind of make sure that we're compliant with everything. And there's just a lot, it's difficult. I see, like I said in my post, I appreciate small businesses so much more now after running this small operation. I can't even imagine, and they're, I know people higher up in the smaller companies, they're working just as much as I am, cause that CFO that I'm good friends with, the owner, they're always working, he's emailing me at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I'm up cause I'm working,
Well, you sell all types of products. The majority of your stuff is Creality that I know of, but you have other things as well, right? That aren't Creality related. Is that right?
Yeah. So we started off as, Creality, like our customer base is definitely a majority Creality. I don't really have a number on that. I thought about sending out a survey because I'm just curious to see what the split is. Cause I have support for, let me see here. I know, I have a lot of machines here. I'm just going to my firmware page because we started out with the CR10. And the thing was, there were kind of some guides on how to get Marlin on your CR10. There was no source code provided, which was the whole reason for the GPL thing. So I had to learn how to actually program the Arduino stuff. And luckily I have a programming background in multiple different languages. So it was not very difficult to pick up. And I'd already been doing Arduino projects, but Marlin is a whole nother animal because it's just so massive. And, I said this in the news post too, about the 1 year, I originally started getting involved with the firmware for the stock boards. When Tiny Machines approached me, I actually used to do all his firmware for him. And then, I just got super busy and he's got a buddy of his that does it for them now. But I actually used to do all their firmware for all the Tiny Machines products because no one else was doing it. And then I started releasing the firmware. And then, Chris was like, well, why have you thought about, doing auto bed leveling on it? I was like, well, I think I can make it work. And I learned how to slim down the firmware and, got it all to fit. And, most of the work put into, anytime there's new firmware release, like a major one, is slimming it down so it fits on these smaller boards. And yeah, that was the big base was the Creality CR10, and then obviously the S4, the S5, and then they came out with the S and all their other ones. I'm just looking here. I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 machines officially supported right now. Actually, I think there's more than that. Yeah, there's more than that. So 18, 19, almost 20.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of
that's just with your firmware.
That's just with my firmware. So that's like, and that whole process is, us getting machines in, like that's one of the reasons, like I still do the review is so that way, we're not having to shell out the money for a new machine when, because to be honest, we're full, like we don't have room for more printers. So, it's not like I'm going to go spend money on a machine, but we will now at this point. But early on, it was like, well, I can't really be spending thousands of dollars on machines that we don't really need.
Right.
Because I didn't want to, bankrupt us.
I got you. Well, I don't know, you move printers right now, especially like Creality and the other manufacturers, they're moving pretty quickly with new product designs.
Yeah, they are.
So once you have your firmware done and your hardware done for, say, a CR10, just say a CR10.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't really have a use for multiple CR10s anymore, correct?
Correct. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
You know that feeling. Correct. I mean, like I have no two machines right now that are the same model. Every single machine here is a different model.
Okay.
I did at one point have 2 TiVo Tornadoes, and I gave one to my buddy who wanted to get into 3D printing, and he always would help us out when we needed it and wouldn't let me pay him. So I was like, you know what, you're taking a printer, because he kept talking about buying one. I was like, here. And I also got him, I gave him 2 printers, a TiVo Tornado, and there was like this weird Pixmillion i3, which was kind of a pile, but we got it working good.
Good. Now you sell you don't sell your firmware, but you do sell your hardware.
Right. So, just like I'm just gonna go to my store here. Let me see if I can switch over, because let's see if this OBS works. Does this work? Oh, it does.
That works. Woohoo!
Okay. So, I mean, like this is sorted by popularity. So you can see what our top sellers are, because we've got our bed mats, which is, a built, it's similar to like Build Tack or Lock Build, it's just it's our version of it. And then, obviously our original full size, these are 18 millimeter bed leveling kits. We sell a lot of couplers. These are the spring replacements. We make these are ABS printed, and then we have an arbor press that we put the aluminum spacers in with, so they're all press fit.
Right.
And, we carry the bootloader kits, tubing, lots of replacement parts, so, and the nice thing is, it can, when I was talking about getting parts to replace ones on the ANET, I remember going, I don't know, like if I need a specific part. So I have them broken out into like different categories. So it's like, okay, I got Ender 2. I can just click Ender 2 here. And these are all the products that will work with an Ender 2. So it's like, okay, I need a new 40 millimeter fan. This one's in that category. So I assume that one's going to work.
Right.
Just stuff like that. And we sell a lot of fans too, because as you know, the stock ones don't last long. And, these are not the same cheap ones that, the companies are shipping with. My cost on these fans is more than what the retail is on, the cheap ones, but these are going to last a lot longer. Like we've got all the specs listed on them too. I don't have the life on these. I can look it up, but the Sunon fans are over 5 years, typically is what they advertise. So, but yeah, so I mean, the niche and focus is kind of like, okay, what are people needing the most? And it's just like I keep seeing people buying, the same cheap fans. You go buy a 2-pack of fans on Amazon for $10. It's the same price as we sell one for. Well, those are the same low quality fans that came with the printer. So you're going to be back in the same position, 6-7 months from now versus, my methodology is I'll buy, I'll spend a few bucks more and just buy it once and have it last for a couple of years.
Right.
So that's like why our products cost more, is because I don't stock the cheap stuff. Like I don't want to have that impression that, we're just reselling the same crap everybody else is. I'm not going to put something in there if I think it's bad.
Right.
So
you get products in to test and go, okay, this is something I can stand behind and I'll put in my store. So
right.
You're not just getting on AliExpress and saying, okay, they've got, if I buy 1,000 of those fans, I can get them for 50 cents a piece.
And it's funny you say that. That's actually, if I were to bulk order the Creality fans, they're about 55 cents a piece it cost.
I hear you.
So,
and I didn't know that. That was a guess, by the way.
No, I'm dead serious. They are very inexpensive fans. That's why they don't last very long.
Right.
But like the mess on my desk is like there's testing stuff. I've got a whole drawer here that's literally just filled with boards and screens. These are all just for testing. And like even though I know most of the time when I make changes and updates to the firmware that they're probably going to work, I flash them on, our printers and the boards. There's a lot of just parts we have here just for the sake of testing. And there's certain printers I keep around just for the sake of testing, because maybe there's other improvements I can still make to them. So I don't part ways with them just yet. But my methodology, it's like, like I'm sure you saw the post about the artillery, which is a printer we're working with out of a company in Shenzhen. It's a smaller company. And we started running that thing over a month ago, and there were a few little things I didn't like with it. And, that's what I'm doing. It's just, I make sure we run a lot of prints. So my thing is, if I can put a part on our printers and we're running them hard and it's holding up to the abuse we're putting it through, then there's no reason it shouldn't hold up, in your average person's use, or even someone that has heavy use like us, like the Titan clones, which we call the Tough Extruder. I have the same original ones on that AM8 that I put on there a year and a half ago before I even sold them, which is why I sell them, because I've gotten a year and a half out of them with 0 problems.
Right.
So it's just like, and my suppliers, they'll send me, samples. I probably have some like, they're just random stuff sitting here. Like they sent me, this is a brass volcano heater block. I didn't ask for it. I'm probably not going to sell it, but they send me stuff to try, and I do go through and, I'll buy samples of like a dozen or two things, and I'll send them out to like my friends that I know will put them on their machines and give me feedback for them, or our employees or guys that, are contractors for us. It's like, here's products, beat the shit out of it. I want to know if it's going to fail. And like there were 3 different Titan clones that I checked, and the one of them failed within 2 weeks. And that was on my buddy's printer. He was like a medium user. I was like, here, I got this in. It's a sample. I'm looking to see if, because that one was significantly cheaper than what we sell now. But there's a reason, because it broke within 2 weeks. I'm not going to sell something like that. And the other one that we sell now is the one that I've been running on machines for a long time now. So, like I said, I got one on my AM, or I have 2 because it's dual extrusion. I have 2 on my AM8, and those have been on there for at least a year and a half now.
Right. Well, some of the parts you don't get in, you actually designed and build some of your own parts too, correct?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So like the products that are actually ours. So, like the build mats, that was a collaboration between myself and a company that I had been dealing with over in China. And I was originally approaching Lock Build, and their costs were so high that if you look at the prices on my sheets now, the prices we retail the sheets for, those prices are lower than the cost on Lock Build sheets.
Okay.
So I was going, okay, well, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Lock Build, but when I'm pricing stuff, it's like, okay, would I pay that much? Because if I wouldn't pay that much, I'm not going to ask my customers to pay that much. So I went out again, got a bunch of samples from bunch of different places. I have quite a few contacts over in Shenzhen now, where, I can reach out to them and they'll go and grab stuff from multiple different factories, and they'll send me samples from everywhere so I can test them. And so I finally found one that was good. I had them increase the thickness a little from the sample they sent me because I wanted something that's going to be more durable. And that's what brought about the Easy Mats was my complaint with Build Tech was it's super thin. I paid $20 for a little 200 by 200 sheet, and I put my scraper through it on the 3rd print, And then, another thing was I didn't like the adhesives people were using on the build sheets, because every time you peel them off, you got to sit there with WD-40 or acetone and scrape all the crap off the bed. So that led me to look into different types of 3M adhesives, because everybody was using, I think it was a 9040A, and we're using the 300 LSE, which is good up to 120 Celsius, and you can peel it off and there's next to no residue left on it. So,
absolutely. I got some cheap ones off of Amazon one time. They were like $13. It was for my ANET A8 bed. It was $13 for 3 of them. They were fantastic. And when you wanted to change, you pulled it up, you might have one little spot of glue left, and they didn't peel up on their own. They stuck. Now I haven't tried yours. So I have to say, but now you were just talking about the printer that you're working to get designed and out. Yeah. You want to touch on that some?
Well, so it's basically like the incarnation of my idea of, the perfect machine, in terms of something that's, under $1,000, larger build volume, and, kind of the same methodology. I know what goes out on these Chinese printers, and I want to make sure that, just simple stuff like, we have a high-end power supply, like a Meanwheel, the Sunon fans that I'm very fond of. They're expensive, but they're worth it. Bed leveling, lightweight carriage, a Titan extruder, all metal hot end, the tight tolerance tubing, having a board that's ready for dual extrusion. So you just drop a stepper driver in there. You've already got a second hot end output. So something that is awesome out of the box, but you can still upgrade and modify later on. And once we get to a point where we have more bandwidth to actually do custom machines, I want to be able to have like, okay, you want a Titan Arrow on yours, just check the box on the site, and then we build it to order. Right. That's kind of my vision for it. So I just actually ordered a dozen of those machines last night I got a bunch of our, like very early customers that are awesome people that have been supporting us, and they reached out to us and, they're like, hey, I know you're still working on it, but if you got something that's, pretty much ready to go, we're willing to pay you for it and give you feedback on it. So, the idea is to sell them those at, just a little bit over the cost. So, I can get in the hands of actual people, because my experience, and it may be awesome for me, they might uncover issues that I never even thought of.
Right.
So, right. And, before I go and, put it out for everybody, I want to make sure that we have everything tested, because there might be something I've overlooked. I'm not perfect, and everybody kind of uses their printer and has different processes from, one to the other person. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So, what is your timeline that you're looking for maybe having this out, for sale?
I'd like to have it out if let's say nothing, there's no major issues, with the machine itself. I don't have to make any design changes. I'd like to bring it to market, mid to late November.
Okay. Now I got a question for you, because I don't remember, but were you at Murph this last year?
Yeah, we actually were a sponsor.
I did not see you nor see your booth or anything else.
Yeah, 3D printing. There's a channel called 3D Printing Canada. I thought I saw them in here. They actually interviewed me, and the funny thing was, I was talking about the whole GPL thing before I even posted that video that started all the, coverage of it by all the other YouTubers. I was going on. I'd been going on about it before I even, was like, I'm tired of it, and, started actually making a push publicly to it. So
I have to admit, now, when I took the printed printer to Murph, I expected to see a lot more of them there.
Yeah, I think you were the only one.
I was the only one. Yeah. And it was pretty popular, and I didn't get to leave my table a lot. So I missed a lot of Murph this year. Not going to happen next year.
Yeah. I want to get a bigger, I think we might do, because we kind of were hemming it. We were like, I don't know, because here's the thing. I would love to, I enjoy going to those things. I love interacting with people in person, especially meeting like customers, which like, I love interacting with people. That's why I like doing the live streams. And the thing is, I would like to see if we can get in at a higher sponsor level so we can be a little more towards the main area, because we were kind of off by like Gear Down for What and all the other vendors off to the side. We were on like the outer table. We were right by the glitter printer.
Were you? Okay. So you were at my end of the venue, just over on the other side.
Yeah, and we had like a big sign and everything too. We had like a sign that was like, I think 6 foot tall.
You have to understand, Tim, that was my first event. The only event that I had been to before that was a mini maker fair in Gainesville, Florida, that where I met Fun King 3D and Ron the Happy Extruder.
Yeah, I met a lot of people
there, but and Shom from Askewed View, and Uncle Ron. That was it. That was the only event I had ever been to, and I actually wasn't planning on putting anything out there. I was just planning on visiting. And then when I went to Murph, dude, I was just overwhelmed.
I know. I mean, I am too, because it's like, there's just so much awesome stuff. Like,
and now I will say that Earth, when I went to the East Coast Rep, it was more laid back for me. I got to walk around and got to see a lot more things and talk to more people and that type of thing. It was, to me, it was a more pleasant experience, but there wasn't near as much there. All right, we're coming into the time where people get to ask you questions, and I've got a couple over here in Notepad that I pulled out of the chat.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm kind of sucked into the moment here. I lost chat progress right now.
Oh, it's okay. I'll keep up with chat. You don't worry about that.
Okay.
Jake from State Farm actually wrote quite a few. He said, "Dear Tim, I love you, but can we get our control menu back with the new firmware?"
It's on my to-do list. The reason for that, and it's actually on, we keep getting requests for this, even though it's on the FAQ on the firmware page. So the reason for that is because on the 1284P boards, you have very limited space. And in order to get you guys all the new features like the motion control, the optimized stepper movements, like Marlin 119 brought a lot of new changes to the table, which increased the program size. Right. So I think I spent close to 300 hours just slimming down Marlin to the point where like certain G code commands that no one uses are stripped out to save space, and recoding certain parts of it because the space is so tight. And it's it's weird because certain things, because how all the codes arranged, certain things, if you remove one, it might actually make the size bigger. So I keep saying once I get time, which hopefully happens soon, once we start getting into more of a, fluid, workflow here, because the thing is, our main guy, Tyler, who, you saw earlier, he was out for like almost 3 weeks because he had his tonsils removed. So I was having to do his work. We did have friends of ours helping us. But that involved me overseeing everything to make sure everything gets done correctly. So I need to get things in order so I can get time, but it's on my to-do list. I think I can cut down some more fat. I think I'm going to start removing stuff like, things for Delta printers, because we're probably not ever going to support Delta printers, and I can add it back in later. And by removing, usually what I do is I'll just put them in blocks of statements, and I have flags set for certain boards. So basically, if a board has a limited chip, I take blocks of code that are non-essential and wrap them into an if statement that as long as that flag is not set, right, that code will not even get compiled in. And, I go as far as to shave down, messages and menu items to abbreviate certain things to save bytes. We're talking literally about shaving bytes, like bumming lines of code everywhere. And
I understand.
Yeah, you're a program, so you know what I'm talking about. So like every little thing, just something as simple as like, Marlin, the version file has a UUID, which is not used. It's just there. It's for backwards compatibility, but that's a long string that they put in, and that saves me like 50 bytes.
Yeah.
And that could be the difference between a compiling and fitting on the board and not.
I understand exactly, because I took the Prusa firmware, the original Mark II firmware that I had, and made it compatible with the smart graphic interface, the bigger one, the 12864 one, the 128 by 64. Yeah. And I had to cut out so much stuff just to get it to compile onto the board.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not worth it to do that, but you have to do it in order to get the stuff in for your machines.
Yeah. And I mean, even just, like I said, like we have it out there the firmware's out there for free for everybody. Now, when I did first start out, we actually bundled the firmware. It was, a package with the kit. So we only it was only our ABL customers. And, a lot of people, there's still some guys that go around trolling saying that, oh, you're breaking the GPL, but we weren't. The source was being provided. We were also pre-compiling hex files, which, dear God, trying to compile 60 different variations for each machine, each probe mount. That's why we switched over to the unified. Right. And we used to do that. And I think I'm glad we did bundle that, because it gave people more incentive to go with us. But now that we're a little bit bigger, I can take that risk of, someone's going to download it and they can use it for a competitor product or a DIY, and we don't see any support from them. But, it's at the point now where it doesn't matter. I do want people to have a better firmware for their machine, whether they know how to code or not, right, especially with all these machines being, shipped with no thermal protection. Like that's literally, it's a life threatening issue, because you have these printers in people's houses and they can literally burn your house down. And that's why I said, before Creality actually became GPL compliant, I told everybody, I'm like, I'm not featuring them on the channel anymore, but I feel like I have an obligation to put out the firmware so that people have an option, and then I went and I paid $1,100 for a CR10 and a CRX, or a CR20 and a CRX, because they weren't added and I didn't have them. And I like to actually test our firmware on machines, like me personally. I've tried doing remote development with people that have them, and it's just not the same. There's little things that get missed, and it doesn't have that same kind of polish on it. But luckily, Creality is compliant. I do have a very love-hate relationship with them. But I'm not going to turn my back on the Creality community just because I'm pissed off at them. Right. It's not fair to everybody.
Well, Grumpy Dude pops in here and he asked the other day about EU sellers. What about having like E3D or somebody like that sell your stuff? Well, is it even possible, or, that type of thing?
I think so. Right now, it's not possible. I'll be completely honest, because the fact that we don't have the physical space to get more employees in here. You know, we're operating out of a 1,500 square foot condo, about 500 of that. Like this room is about 180 square feet. And our packaging area, which is our, our, you know, what would be our dining room. Luckily we have a kitchen that, you know, we can have a large kitchen table in, so it doesn't really matter. That's like my wife's office area. So she's got two big desks, and then we have huge racks, the same kind of racks that these printers are on, with all our inventory on there. It's all organized. So once we get, the plan is right now, and for any of you guys thinking about going out on your own and thinking about buying a house and getting a mortgage, banks want to see 2 years of your business earnings. They want to see that you're growing or at least stable. So the problem we're in right now is, even though my wife and I have excellent credit, you know, we have a decent amount of money saved up for a down payment, banks won't give us a loan. Right. So, but at the end of the year, you know, if things keep going well, then we should be able to get a loan. And the plan is to get a house, at the very least with a full basement, so we can run the business out of there. Ideally, we'd like to find something with, you know, like about half an acre of land, so we can put up a shop, and then have that be the TH3D building, you know, so something like, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 square feet with an office, you know, have all of our, you know, have tons of tables lined up for packaging, assembly, and then we can get more people in to then, you know, produce the kits at a higher rate, where we can then wholesale them to people. Because I know people in the EU, UK, you know, basically anywhere outside the US, I know customs fees suck. You know, we deal with them too. We import a lot of stuff and we get hit with them, especially now with all these new tariffs. Like we're getting, you don't even want to know how much we have to pay on tariffs and some stuff, because the problem is the customs agents have no idea what this stuff is. So we get hit with tariffs on stuff that shouldn't even be getting hit with tariffs. And right. Good luck trying to fight them, because they'll just hold your package. So I'm stuck in a position where if I pay it, I can't get that back, because it's like, you know, admitting their right. Or I can fight it, but then my inventory is held up and I have nothing to sell and I can't pay my bills.
Well, I happen to know somebody that's got half acre of land. It may be a few miles from you, like Florida, but I happen to know somebody, if you're looking for a place.
Florida's a little too warm for me.
It's looking at hot, not warm.
We're looking at it like, Indiana, or I prefer Indiana. My wife's originally from Rhinelander, Wisconsin, which is way up north, like UP area. And she wants to go to Kenosha, but the reality is that Indiana is a lot cheaper. You guys would just absolutely be sick to your stomach if you saw how much we're paying in taxes just to Illinois. We're getting completely destroyed here. It's like, let me put it this way. If just moving, we will bring our profit up by close to 10 to 15% just by relocating.
I hear you.
Like that, it's disgusting. You know, I could go on a rant about Illinois for hours, but it sucks.
Let me back up here. Nuru is hoping he can convince you to use high temp magnets and not bed clips for your upcoming product. The easy match with spring steel sheets.
Oh, hang on. Let me go grab that. Hang on. So I actually had an Ender 3 size made, which I gave to our buddy Matt, because he prints on his Ender 3 a lot. And I was like, here, you can take this and test it. So this is just the first run of them, just spring steel. You know, it's got a nice finish, 0.5 millimeter thick, and, you know, you can bend it, goes back flat, you know. And what I like to do is I've just been clipping it onto the bed right now. Right. Here's a problem with magnets. Magnets are great, but when you start introducing heat, they start to lose their magnetic charge. So I've played with a bunch of different types of magnets, but the problem is, just having them on a 60-degree bed, they start to lose their holding power after about a week. You know, and if you look at all the recent feedback from Creality's Flex system, which is literally just a sheet stuck to two magnets that are like the equivalent of a fridge magnet, right? They're pulling up. You know, they'll work okay on a cold bed, but they pull up. You have to have something rigid like this, you know, and you know this is definitely going to be like, this is the same steel we're going to be using for the final product. I don't want to have people like gluing magnets to the bottom of their bed, because, you know, most of these printers now, And like all my printers, they either came with insulation on the bed or I insulated them. So me personally, I'm not going to go and rip apart my insulation on every single machine just to glue magnets to the bottom. And the problem is too, you know, if God forbid you have, you know, a small nick across the traces, you could short out your bed with a magnet too.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
And so like, and this is part of like the whole product, you know, when I'm coming out with a new product, especially like one of ours, is trying to think of all the possible variables of what people could screw up, you know, and, you know, there's certain things I can't do because the majority of people, they're going to have too many problems with them. And then it's going to reflect badly and the product will be bad, regardless if it's actually the product's problem or the person not understanding how to use it correctly. You know, like we get people complaining about the mats because they got a bubble underneath it. Even though we have a video on how to install it, we have instructions on how to install it, we still get emails saying your product is a piece of crap because I got a bubble on it. It's like, you know, I'm sorry, like take your time. Like I put this on here in about, you know, 15 seconds, you know, and I've got a bubble under my bed once. So, you know, it's weird, and it kind of limits what I'm able to do and how advanced certain things can get, because I got to think of it from a, you know, a general consumer perspective, you know, not a, you know, person that's like me, where, you know, I can figure out how it works, you know, especially if I have documentation on it. But if it's, you know, any sort of remotely complicated, then, you know, we're going to be spending a ton of time doing supports, or we're going to get a ton of returns, or we're just going to get bad feedback. You know, so I'm not opposed to using magnets. I did get, I don't know if you guys have heard Swiss clips. They're very low profile clips. People use them for glass. They're also used for like crafts and stuff. I think that will be what we'll go with, because they're very low profile. They're not obtrusive like binder clips, but, you know, there's nothing stopping from us, you know, them getting this from us and then going and putting magnets under their bed if they want to. You know, it'll work just fine with it. You know, they're steel sheets. This is just a magnetic hook. They will stick. So it might be just, you know, yeah, you can do that, but we don't really want to sell them because I don't want to deal with people screwing things up and yelling at us.
So Chris Self-asked, will you have a 400 by 400? What sizes are you planning on having? I mean,
okay, so right now the guy we're using to cut the sheets, he's limited to the CR10 size max right now, but he is getting a larger machine. So I was going to start off with like the 235 by 235 for, you know, like the Ender 3s. And, you know, even though they're a little bit larger, they'll work on machines like the ANET or, you know, the Wanhao. Right. I'd have to check the way out, because those, now I think about it, those beds have screws that protrude. So that might not be too good, but I could always have him cut if there's a demand for that, I can have him cut a Wanhao specific one with the corners, you know, lopped off.
Right.
But he is going to be able to go up to, once he gets the new machine to cut them, he is going to be able to go up to, I think he said by 600 by 800. So
yeah.
And I'm really happy with them.
Well, I have an idea for you. You can do a whole system for the whole Creality line and buy just a whole bunch of beds, take them and get them machined out, glue your neodymium magnets in it, then put the heater and the insulation on it and sell it as a kit. You know,
so fun fact, I have a customer of ours that we do 3D printing prototyping for, who owns a machine shop, and he actually makes, well, he said they haven't ordered in a while, but he made beds for Gecko Tech, because they sold beds like that. But the thing is, they haven't reordered because they're not selling very much, because you're talking for a properly machined replacement bed, not including a heater, you're talking well over $150.
Oh yeah. You know, and their kit, their kits were expensive as well, right? The Build Tech.
I mean, Build Tech, their stuff
whole system.
I mean, I was looking, I think hang on, let me see. Build Tech Flex Plate. Let me see. So Build Tech, let's see, let's just get a comparable here. So they got like a 304 by 304. It's $140.
Right.
Like that's for a Build Tech sheet, their magnetic plate, and the spring steel sheet. So I mean, I'm going to be able to retail this with one of our easy mats. So the sheet and the easy mat for less than $30 retail.
I got you.
So, and the thing is, if I can find, ideally, the ideal magnet to use would be something that uniformly covers the bed. Okay. That a user can just stick onto it. Okay.
Right.
That doesn't degrade under heat. So if I can find something like that, maybe I'll have it. Well, you want to just clip it on the bed, you know, it's this price. You want to add the magnetic sheet, it's this price, you know. And like I said, there's nothing stopping anybody from, you know, making their own magnetic solution.
I tell you one thing. I need to get you in touch with a guy I know. He makes these, and the guys can't see them, but you can. You see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's PEI powder coated spring steel sheets.
Is that from China?
No, this guy makes them in the U.S. in Virginia.
Interesting.
So might get you in touch with him. See, then you can offer powder coated ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in that. You know, I actually got the lead for these spring steel sheets from Naomi.
Oh yeah.
So because she was trying to get a couple companies to use them, but they were too expensive, so they didn't want to use them.
Right.
So.
All right, guys. If y'all got any more questions for Tim, go ahead and pop them in here. We'll.
Yeah, I'm looking through here. Neuro. I know who Neuro is. He actually, fun fact, I built his printer about a year ago, and I shipped it out right before Maker Faire. And he actually lives in New York because I went to New York Maker Faire last year with Chris and Corey from Tiny Machines.
Right. We so right now at the growth rate and the business rate you are you happy you made the move?
I am. I mean, I work a lot more than I did before. even when I was working, you know, this and my day job. You know, and the thing is, it's really hard for me to like disconnect because I feel like I need to be available a lot. Otherwise I'm going to let people down, which is my problem. I should, you know, I've been trying to just turn off my phone or put on silent so I can actually enjoy some downtime, you know, and my downtime is usually me working on my own machines, you know, and spending time with my wife. So I definitely need to spend more time with my wife. She's been great. I don't know too many women that would, you know, be able to actually understand what I'm trying to do here and be supportive of it instead of, you know, being just, you know, instead of being like, well, I need more attention and leaving you, you know, because I've seen that happen a lot. You know, I know a lot of small business owners that, you know, they started their business and you know, their significant others didn't understand what starting a business meant. You know, it means long hours. It means, you know, working all the time. And the hope is that, you know, you put all your time in now and eventually get to a point where it'll self-sustain and you can just kind of, you know, sit back and relax for a little bit and, you know, be able to go, you know, oh, I need to go take 2 weeks off to just recharge. You know, I can't do that right now because if I do that, I come back to a complete mess and backlog of everything. So, you know, I'm hoping to get to that point, you know, but I also see, you know, small business owners like the IT client I've had, you know, where, you know, they've had the company for 20 something years and he's still working a lot.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. And I have this in my notepad, but, Fernando Pena asked, any plans on an easy ABL kit for the AlphaWise U20?
So I have a U20 sitting in my living room, which I need to review for GearBest. I'm probably going to do it. I found if I do live streams in the morning when I first wake up, it's better because otherwise once I get into the evening, I'm, you know, really deep into whatever else I'm working on and I end up forgetting about it. But I have the U20. It really depends on what board it has, because if it's got a board that can run Marlin, it can definitely be supported. I haven't even looked at the electronics. I have no idea what's inside it. So I've been told, though, I heard that it's like a 32-bit board, And if it is, I'm hoping it's not running a closed source firmware, because that's going to make things really complicated. So I'm not quite sure yet. I will know once I start digging into it. You know, if it is a proprietary board, the easiest way might be to just, you know, swap it out for something else that, you know, fits in there. So, because a lot of these closed source boards, it's very frustrating to be able to tune stuff. And I know they've been having a lot of issues with the firmware on there. And I saw a firmware update, and it looked like it was a bin file. So I'm going to assume, based on the information I've seen, that it probably does have a closed source board. You know, and if that's the case, I'm probably not going to hang on to it. You know, regardless if it prints okay or not, because I don't like being locked out of my boards and being able to change stuff on it.
So let me ask you this: any plans on like doing Marlin 2.0, 32-bit?
So just so you guys know, Marlin 2.0, for the most part, and Marlin 119, which is what my latest Unified is built on, for the processors that we're using and the printers we support, the feature sets are the same and the code is pretty much the same. So Marlin 2.0, what that's going to do is going to make the configuration a lot simpler. It's basically going to put all of your backend files into subfolders so you don't see them in the IDE. I actually might even, I was literally thinking about this on the way home from work, or from the meeting. I keep saying work. I said work. I was like, it was my work at one point, but thinking about doing my own thing where basically when you load up the firmware, you just see configuration.h. That's it. You know, so there's not all these tabs you have to click through. You know, I might do my own simplified version. And in terms of 32-bit support, before I jumped on this, I actually just got off the phone with a guy who I'm working with on a drop-in replacement board for the Creality printers that's 32-bit with TMC drivers on it. So that might be coming very soon. I just got to he's going to get me a prototype once he's done designing the board, and then we're going to start working on the firmware. So that will be very likely to have Marlin 2.0 on it. I can definitely get Smoothie on there, but I'm not a big fan of Smoothie. I definitely prefer Marlin over Smoothie.
Don't mention Smoothie in my presence.
Yeah,
this machine that I have running right here has been the bane of my existence for months, and everybody in the chat knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and now you got to do it, and it works.
Now I got to duet on it. So, okay, so we've got 2 more questions because I've only got about 6 minutes left because I normally don't go past 7:15.
Okay.
Jake from State Farm, he asked this earlier, and I have it in my notepad. Do you mind sharing what the 5015 fan setting in the firmware actually does technically?
So all it does is it changes the type of pulse width modification, or PWM for short, that controls the fan. It uses what's called softer PWM. So if you would look at it on a scope, it's much more smoothed out. It's not as aggressive as your normal one. And the reason for that is because certain fans, like some of the 5015s I sell, they're, you know, high flow fans or higher quality fans, and they have to have a different type of signal input. A lot of the cheap ones don't really care. But we get into the more premium ones, they will make an audible whine at lower speeds. And what that setting does is just basically going to smooth out the output, so it doesn't make that whining noise.
Okay. All right. So the last question I'm going to ask you before we wrap all this up. Nuru asks, if you ever update the EasyABL, will you better support AC bed heaters like EasyABL version 4 maybe?
So that is something I've been trying to combat. And the thing is, with the AC beds, the issue isn't really the sensor itself. You know, the sensor, it can pick up the frequency. So what's happening is, you know, depending on what region you're in, you have a 50 or 60 hertz frequency on your AC current. So what happens is when that heater's on, the sensor's internal IC, which runs on, like ours anyways, run on 100 hertz, it can get confused and throw off the reading because it sees that other signal and it thinks it's triggered. Now, the main way to combat that is to ground your printer frame and use a high-quality solid-state relay to control the SSR, because then the firmware can shut off the bed heater while it's probing. Now, we do have, if you look on our site, there's four kits. There's the 2 large-size ones, and then the 2 different connection types, the Easy Connect and the Direct Wire. And then we have our EasyABL Minis, and those are version 3. Now, the version 3.1 sensors, those are a slight change, same electronics as the V3s. The main difference is those cables are fully shielded cables. So any sort of electrical magnetic interference, instead of it going into the actual wires and throwing off the sensor, the idea is that that shielding absorbs and picks those up instead of your actual sensor wires, and then that gets drained out through the ground, and that will help it be more accurate. I do have one machine here, the TiVo Tornado, with an AC bed. I have a high quality solid state relay. I have the same Maker brand that I have in our shop, and it works perfectly, because the problem was the stock SSR, when it's off, it was still leaking AC current. So if I put my multimeter across that, I get a couple of volts of AC. Now that's not enough to actually heat the bed, but it's enough that there's still an AC signal going through the bed for the sensor to pick up. So that's the whole reason why they don't work. So you get printers that ship with really low end SSRs like the TiVo Tornado, or people buying, you know, like $5 random brands or Photech clones, which if you buy a Photech from Amazon, it's a clone. Like they don't sell on Amazon. And the problem with the clones is they leak AC current. So that's what throws it off. Grounding your printer frame helps a lot, and not just for, you know, sensors working, but safety wise too, because if you know, that bed's moving back and forth, if that wire strains and breaks and God forbids touches the bed, there's nothing to drain that away to ground. That's what ground is for, is to drain that current down. Otherwise, guess where ground's going to go? It's going to find it through you when you touch the metal bed.
Right.
So, actually, Neuro, I do have, I don't know if you want me to say your real name. I know who you are. If you want me to send you out one of the new kits with the shielded sensor, I have all my wires on my printer with the AC bed, like completely just tucked away. I can send you one out to test, because I would like to get feedback on that in terms of if it makes a difference with the AC. I know it made a difference with DC interference from like the stepper motors, but I haven't gotten any direct feedback from an AC bed yet. That's the only scenario I haven't tested in. But like I said, the sensors are the same aside from the cabling. So, you know, they're the same quality, same customized ones we've been using for a while. We just decided to add it on the shielding because I want to make, you know, the thing is, like, the evolution of the kits is a bunch of little changes, you know, and when you compare the first one that I ever made to the one now, there's a lot of differences, and all those little differences, like the power filtering, you know, the faster optocoupler, because, you know, we could cut costs down if we use a cheaper optocoupler on the board, but I choose not to, because the ones we have, they trigger faster, they're more accurate, meaning that the probe signal is going to be more accurate, you know, whereas you go with the cheaper ones, you know, they might not react exactly at the same time every time it probes. And they work for the most part, but, you know, I want our stuff to have the best stuff we can put into it, you know, even if that means bringing up the cost a little. You know, if you compare, you know, just look at the pictures of our boards compared to, you know, other people's or DIYs, you know, there's a lot more on there, and that just basically gives you a better end result and something that's higher quality. Cool,
man. Well, Tim, we've come to the end. I mean, these always go fast because they're nonstop from beginning to end. It doesn't take long for an hour to go by. So if you can, tell everybody where they can find you, and then I'll get on here and do the outro, and we'll talk after I hit the stop broadcast button.
All right. Well, again, I'm Tim with TH3D Studio. If you guys want to check out, you know, our shop, you can go to TH3D Studio, click, I think it's store or shop. I just redid the site, so forgive me. But yeah, you can go to TH3D Studio. We got a shop there. If you click the knowledge base, there's a lot of tutorials, there's downloads, there's firmware, all free of charge. You can check it out. You know, if you want to upgrade your printer and you're not quite sure what upgrade path to go with, you know, you can send us a message. We can guide you in the right direction, whether that's getting stuff from us or just giving you recommendations, you know, in case we don't carry something. So, you know, that's what we do. We try to give everybody, you know, the best information we can based on our experiences. And, you know, like I said, the products we carry are stuff that I personally use. You know, if I don't think, if I don't put it on my printer and it's not holding up to my abuse, I don't sell it. It's, you know, that's kind of my methodology in terms of choosing things to put in.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to click over, and I'm going to tell everybody thank you for watching. We've been talking with Tim from TH3D, and he's going to send me in Twitter. He's going to send me a list of like YouTube and Instagram and all these places where you can find Tim, and links to his store. If he wants to put all those links in there, he can do it, and I'll paste it in the description. for you to consume later. I don't have that right now. If you're not subscribed to me or Tim, you know, find us, click that subscribe, ring that bell so you know when we're on, because Tim likes to get online as well, just like I do. So thank you for coming, and we will see you the next time that we have somebody on here. Maybe we'll have somebody next week. I don't know. We're trying, but we will see you tomorrow night for sure. So take it easy, Tim. Thank you very much for being here.
No problem.
And, all right, I'll be with you in just a second. All right, bye, guys. Have a great time.